A transit from Saturn opposing your natal Neptune represents a profound, deeply sobering, and spiritually defining epoch in an individual's psychological development. Occurring roughly every 29 years, this transit brings a direct, uncompromising confrontation between the planet of structure, material reality, and boundaries, Saturn, and the planet of dreams, illusions, mysticism, and boundless dissolution, Neptune. When these two outer planets lock into a 180° circpolarization, the cosmos initiates a rigorous quality control audit of your fantasy life, your spiritual beliefs, and your mechanisms of escapism. It is a time when the cold, unyielding light of reality is shown directly into your foggiest rooms, demanding that you wake up from comfortable delusions while learning how to ground your highest ideals into solid, material form. The anatomy of the opposition. To comprehend the unique friction of this transit, one must look at the radical systemic divergence of the two archetypes involved. Saturn operates as the principle of definition and gravity. It values facts, hard work, limits, and the concrete laws of time and cause and effect. Neptune, by contrast, operates as the principle of the infinite. It seeks to dissolve all boundaries, craving union with the divine, creative transcendence, and an escape from the harshness of the material world. When transiting Saturn moves into direct opposition with your natal Neptune, an intense psychological tension arises between what is real and what is imagined. The opposition aspect typically projects this friction outward through your environment or relationships. Often, you will find that the practical structures, responsibilities, or authority figures in your life, Saturn, are in direct conflict with your secret dreams, artistic visions, or idealized expectations of how the world should be, Neptune. The disillusionment of the ideal, waking from the fog. The primary experiential hallmark of a Saturn-Neptune opposition is a profound, often painful wave of disillusionment. Neptune has a tendency to romanticize reality, throwing a beautiful, shimmering veil over toxic relationships, unrealistic career paths, or unviable spiritual dogmas. When Saturn stands directly across from this point, it ruthlessly tears the veil away. During this transit, you are forced to see things exactly as they are, rather than how you wished they would be. A romantic partner you placed on a pedestal may reveal their deeply human flaws, a creative project you assumed would effortlessly succeed may face harsh logistical gridlock, or a spiritual community you trusted implicitly may expose hypocritical or manipulative dynamics. This popping of the Neptunian bubble can initially induce a state of existential grief, confusion, or a feeling that the color has been drained out of your life. However, Saturn is not acting out of cruelty, it is performing a necessary psychological surgery, removing the cancerous illusions that have kept you stagnant so that you can begin building on a foundation of absolute truth. The collapse of escapism and the call to somatic discipline. Because Neptune rules the urge to escape the friction of daily life, its opposition from Saturn brings a sudden, heavy boundary to your coping mechanisms. If you have historically dealt with stress through avoidance, toxic positivity, substance reliance, or constant daydreaming, Saturn will introduce consequences that make these escapes impossible to maintain. This transit frequently manifests as a period of low physical vitality, ambient anxiety, or a strange sense of psychological vulnerability. Because Neptune can leak energy when unprotected, Saturn's opposition demands that you build tight energetic and physical boundaries. You are pushed to adopt strict routines of somatic discipline, such as clean eating, structured sleep patterns, and practical mental health habits. Saturn forces you to realize that you cannot run away from the responsibilities of your physical body or your material life without inviting systemic collapse. It demands that you stay present in the room with your discomfort, teaching you how to find safety within your own skin rather than in the clouds. The alchemical reward, constructive mysticism and grounded artistry. Ultimately, the evolutionary purpose of Saturn opposing your natal Neptune is not to kill your imagination, but to make your dreams functional. Left to itself, Neptune remains a vague, unmanifested daydream, a masterpiece that is never painted or a spiritual vision that never changes a life. Saturn introduces the chisel to the marble. When you stop mourning the death of your illusions and accept the structural demands of Saturn, a beautiful alchemy occurs. You become a grounded visionary or a practical mystic. The deconstruction of spiritual bypassing and fake wholeness. As the opposition between transiting Saturn and natal Neptune deepens, it penetrates the core of your spiritual worldview and your relationship to the metaphysical. Neptune is the archetype of faith, divine union, and ultimate surrender. Its highest desire is to melt into the cosmic ocean of oneness. However, in its shadow expression, Neptune can easily become the architect of spiritual bypassing, the dangerous psychological tendency to use spiritual concepts, cosmic theories, or toxic positivity to avoid facing unresolved emotional wounds, financial duties, or the messy realities of human relationships. When Saturn anchors itself on the opposite side of this axis, it acts as an unyielding cosmic auditor that puts a stop to all spiritual escapism. During this phase, the abstract beliefs that once comforted you may suddenly feel hollow, fragile, and utterly useless in the face of concrete real-world challenges. You may experience a deep crisis of faith, finding yourself completely unable to manifest your way out of a difficult material situation through visualization alone. Saturn demands that your spirituality be structural, functional, and deeply accountable. It asks, is your faith a practical anchor that helps you navigate adversity with dignity, or is it merely a beautiful drug you use to numb yourself to the pain of reality? This confrontation forces you to drop the flowery language of pseudo-enlightenment and build a rugged, authentic spiritual framework, one that respects the laws of matter, time, and human limitation while remaining quietly connected to the sacred. The realignment of creative chaos and the mastery of form. For individuals with a strong creative, artistic, or musical inclination, the Saturn-Neptune opposition can initially register as a devastating, agonizing period of artistic block or creative drought. Neptune is the open channel to the collective unconscious, the boundless reservoir of images, melodies, and poetic concepts that flow into the mind like water. When Saturn introduces its rigid, cold boundaries to this channel, the effortless flow dries up. The erratic flashes of inspiration that you previously relied on disappear, replaced by the heavy, intimidating weight of a blank canvas or a silent page. This creative crisis is actually a masterclass in professional discipline. Saturn is teaching you that raw talent and passive inspiration are not enough to sustain a lifetime of meaningful output. You must learn the craft of structural manifestation. Under this influence, you are forced to trade the romanticized myth of the chaotic, tortured artist for the impeccable work ethic of the craftsman. You must learn to show up at your desk every single morning, regardless of whether the muse speaks to you or not. You are being pushed to study technique, master your tools, and understand the technical, logistical, and commercial boundaries of your medium. By forcing your wild Neptunian imagination to pass through the strict, narrow needle eye of Saturnian labor, this transit ensures that your artistic visions are finally translated out of the realm of vague, fleeting thoughts and hammered into solid, enduring, and tangible masterpieces that can survive the test of time. The redefining of personal boundaries and the end of martyrdom. On a deeply personal and relational level, the Saturn-Neptune axis directly challenges your capacity to protect your own life force. Neptune inherently lacks skin, it is highly porous, overly empathetic, and prone to dissolving personal boundaries in the name of love, compassion, or a savior complex. During this transit, Saturn's opposition acts as a sharp, painful wake-up call regarding where you have allowed yourself to be exploited, manipulated, or emotionally drained by others. You will likely be forced to confront the cold, hard reality of situations where you played the role of the martyr, hoping that your unconditional kindness would heal a deeply toxic relationship, an addict, or an unviable situation. Saturn strips away your capacity to make excuses for people, forcing you to see their behavior with clinical, unsentimental clarity. You are compelled to learn the uncomfortable art of saying a definitive, immovable no. This transit teaches you that true compassion requires fierce boundaries, and that allowing someone to drain your sanity or your resources is not an act of spiritual love, but an act of self-betrayal. You emerge from this crucible with your energetic field heavily fortified, possessing the mature capability to offer genuine, wise assistance to the world without ever sacrificing your own physical health or psychological sovereignty. The dissolution of codependent projections and the cleanse of paranoia. The late stages of the Saturn-Neptune opposition deeply penetrate the psychological mechanism of projection, specifically within your closest interpersonal connections. Neptune is the naturally occurring mist within the psyche that projects your deepest ideals, longing for salvation, and ultimate fantasies onto ordinary human beings. When Saturn sets up camp directly opposite this point, it acts as a harsh, direct wind that clears the atmosphere, forcing you to see that the people you believed were your saviors or your absolute soulmates are merely flawed individuals with their own shadow dynamics. This stage of the transit can trigger a psychological pendulum swing from naive overtrust to hypervigilant paranoia. Because the dissolution of your illusions hurts, your ego may try to protect itself by transforming the Neptunian fairy tale into a gothic horror story, assuming that everyone is out to deceive, manipulate, or betray you. Saturn's role here is to bring you back to the exact middle ground of objective reality. It demands that you stop viewing others through the polarizing lenses of either absolute angels or absolute demons. Through this grueling psychological adjustment, you are forced to clean up your relational contracts. You learn to stop demanding that your partners, friends, or career paths fulfill your unconscious need for a cosmic womb or a spiritual rescue mission. By learning to accept human limitation and systemic flaws without falling into cynicism, you develop an immaculate clarity of sight. You begin to relate to people exactly as they are, appreciating their authentic goodness while respecting their tangible boundaries, which effectively breaks the cycle of codependency that has quietly drained your life force for years. Redefining the creative and spiritual legacy, from ideal to legacy. As the heavy friction of the transit begins to resolve, the focus shifts entirely from what you have lost during this disillusionment to what you are capable of building with the leftover raw materials. Left unaspect, Neptune's genius is fundamentally temporary. It produces beautiful moments of higher consciousness, ecstatic meditations, or fleeting artistic impulses that evaporate the moment you return to the mundane demands of a Monday morning. Saturn's opposition ensures that your connection to the divine, the artistic, and the empathetic is no longer a fragile, fleeting state of mind, but a permanent, concrete feature of your physical reality. This is the phase where you codify your ideals into an actual legacy. If you have spent years dreaming of starting a healing practice, writing a novel, building an alternative community, or dedicating your life to a charitable cause, Saturn demands that you stop talking about it and start executing the administrative framework. It forces you to deal with tax laws, zoning regulations, marketing budgets, and daily operational schedules. This process can feel tedious, as it strips the romantic glamour away from your sacred callings, but it is the only way your vision can survive in the material world. Saturn is providing the bones, the skeleton, and the architectural scaffolding for your soul's deepest yearnings. You transition from an unanchored dreamer who is easily swept away by the changing tides of the collective unconscious into a master structural engineer of the sublime, fully capable of building real-world sanctuaries, systems, or works of art that offer genuine, sustainable healing and inspiration to a fractured world. The return to the world, walking with the quiet composure of clarity. When the separating degrees of the Saturn-Neptune opposition widen and the energetic fog permanently clears, you realize that you have undergone an irreversible, quiet initiation. You do not re-enter your daily life with a dramatic proclamation of enlightenment, nor do you walk away with a cold, hardened heart. The true, mature signature of a successfully integrated Saturn-Neptune transit is a profound, crystalline stillness. You walk through the world possessing a rare, beautiful composure, the ability to see the world's profound suffering, institutional flaws, and everyday disillusionments without losing your capacity for boundless compassion, creative magic, and absolute faith. You no longer need the world to be perfect for you to believe in the sacred, nor do you need your life to be effortless for you to create art. Having survived the crushing weight of reality pressing against your softest dreams, you stand on the bedrock of a clarified existence. You have effectively married the sky to the earth within your own psyche, emerging as a fully grounded visionary who can walk firmly on the soil of material reality while keeping your eyes wide open to the infinite horizons of the divine. Subscribe, like, and share.